Hello, 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 hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Satsang today. Um, Please let me know if the sound is okay. Um, Should be. It's set up the same as last week. And thank you all for being here. I know it's just started. YouTube's just started telling people that it's on, so people are going to start arriving, and be calling out your names as you get here. Uh, In the meantime, I just invite you as you're arriving to settle in, to close other windows that you have on your computer, silence your phone, um, avoid checking Facebook and email and texts and that sort of thing, and really devote this next hour, hour and a half, usually goes about 90 minutes, um, devote it to experiencing yourself. I mean, that's what satsang is about. It's not a, it's not a discourse really. It's not about, getting answers that your mind finds acceptable or interesting or useful. It's about a deep exploration into who you are, because the answer to the question of who you are is the answer to all questions. I'm teaching a class this week on manifestation. It's called How to Manifest Anything, and with the subtitle, Align Your Desires with Your Beliefs, and the World is Yours. And at the heart and soul of manifestation is two things. Number one, of course, is understanding who you are. Because when you understand who you are, you actually understand what it is you want and why. You're in harmony with your own desires. You know, awakening doesn't mean the end of desire. Far from it. Desire is a part of life. It's a critical part of life, and without it, life just ceases. So if the awakening, if enlightenment is going to be really comprehensive and the deepest understanding of everything, it's got to not eliminate desire, but to accommodate, to understand it, to put it in its right place, to give it the kind of space that it deserves, like every other form of life, like everything else on the planet. When you become enlightened, I mean, the clouds, rainy days don't go away. They and who'd want them to, right? So everything that is a part of life. And so at the essence of what I'm teaching about manifestation is the spiritual insight into who you are, and then how the mechanism works by which we create our lives. Everybody's aware these days, not everybody, but most of the planet isn't actually, but those who have been involved in spiritual, looking into things spiritual or personal development or self-help, or accidentally stumbled on the movie The Secret, can't help but be aware of this idea that we are literally creating our reality, creating our experience. The question is how, and for most it means okay, I'm going to focus on what I want until I get it, but that's not actually how it works. It's when you understand yourself, you understand the makeup of the universe. That you understand that the universe isn't made of a bunch of particles. It's actually made of spiritual qualities. That the energy that you experience as a form is actually made up of the energy of being, the energy of spirit, and the form is just temporary. Right? Like the body. I mean, we think of the body as this one thing, but in fact, it's between 50 and 100 trillion cells, each one a living being. And if you zoom in on it, you can't see these cells acting in lockstep, seeing them together, acting together, working things out, having meetings as to what they're going to do. But this entire thing functions as a whole, which gives the appearance that the body is a single unit. So we experience this unified form, this emergence of this form, But in fact, we understand that it's made up of trillions of smaller beings. Well, the manifestation, every object is like that. But the real energy out of which things are made isn't matter, isn't some physical object. It's actually a spiritual quality. And if you take the quality of anything, you take any object and begin to look at it in terms of what it means to you, how it feels to you, your ideals about it. I mean, just take anything you really desire, and look at it in terms of the feelings that you want to get from it. And you'll actually get in touch with the energy that really creates it. It is the inner energy of recognizing the quality within you that is a manifestation of the quality of the whole, is the substance out of which everything is made. This is a deeply spiritual inquiry, and you can trust your feelings that way. The better you feel, the closer you are to yourself. I mean, it makes perfect sense, right? The nervous system is designed to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So the further you get away from yourself, the worse you feel. The more you project your happiness on objects out there, and the further away those objects seem, the worse you feel. But instead, we get more desperate, right? But that feeling, say, hey, wait, time out. You've just stuck your hand in the fire, right? You're not going to try to manifest a cooler fire. You take your damn hand out of the fire. That's what... So the further away you move from yourself, the worse you're going to feel. The closer you move towards yourself. When you turn around and start walking towards yourself, you will immediately feel better. You'll immediately feel a relaxation going through the entire system, and you'll know you're on the right path. That's why I'll do a video. I did one video called Just Feel Good. Just feel good. It's so powerful to recognize that you have the choice to actually feel good in any given moment, no matter what's going on in your life, even when it doesn't seem possible. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of start that off as I'm waiting for people to arrive, which is really wonderful. If you're interested in taking that class, it's very inexpensive. I just put a link into the chat. It's gpwalsh.com/deepdive. And I think you'll enjoy it. So we got, let's see, we have Edita, is that how I pronounce it, Edita, from Bronx, a neighbor of mine. Mix from the UK, from the Isle of Man, I think. Judy is from Florida. We got Brian in Virginia. We got Sarah in France. Haroon from Humboldt, Holland. I'm sorry, I keep butchering your name. Chrissy is also in France. Pam is in Norfolk, UK. Barbara in Idaho. Indus is from Wembley, UK. Northern California is Richard. We have Vicky, also from London. We have Dagang from California. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Divanayar from Canada. Hello, Anne. Mark C. is from Vermont, where spring is elusive. It has been elusive here in New York as well. We had a day, it was like up in the 70s, then it was down into the 40s, then it went up into the 80s, and then it went back down into the 30s. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster ride. I mean, I was out in my T-shirt yesterday. Today I went out in my ski jacket. It was a bit bizarre. And Bill says, it's wonderful to be here with everyone. Vicky's starting right off with her question. What is your take on vegetarian versus eating meat? Well, I have my personal beliefs about it. And I don't want to put it out there as an absolute. There's many different points of view. And again, I always urge people to kind of think it through for themselves. But I do think we also have to have our eyes wide open. There is no absolute necessity for us to have to kill animals for food. There simply isn't. There was at one time when we were, wandering around the Serengeti, but even then, most of our food came from what we gathered. It was vegetables and berries and fruit and roots and that sort of thing. Because it was the successful hunt of something large enough to feed a bunch was actually quite infrequent. So the sheer quantity of meat we eat is way out of line with what the body needs. I mean, you can look at it from that point of view. You can look at it spiritually in terms of, I mean, do I really want to eat another being? Although plants are beings too, but unless you want to just like not eat it all and let your body die, we have to eat something. And they're certainly less. They seem to be less resistant to us eating them than maybe just because they can't run. But it does seem that they're a very natural and willing food for us to take in. There's the moral issue of how modern animal agriculture treats the animals itself. And there's health issues in terms of the amount of antibiotics, how sick the animals actually are, the growth steroids they're given, the diet they're giving, which is not the diet they eat. And in the U.S., that they're all fed corn, and they don't eat corn. They can't digest it, so they have to be fed more chemicals in order to be able to digest the food that they're being given, just to make them fatter quicker. They're taken away from their, when a cow calves has the baby cow, they're immediately taken away. There's an enormous amount of, and these are animals with a limbic brain. They have an emotional attachment. There's a natural bonding to all mammals. And so there's an enormous amount of suffering inflicted on it. And then there is the impact on the environment. Most people don't know that the number one contributor to climate change and pollution in the earth is animal agriculture. Matter of fact, it contributes more to climate change than every other source of change combined. It's over 51%. Most people don't know that. You don't hear a lot about it. It's really been buried. The lobbyists are very, very powerful. So when you add all of those things up, it's hard in good conscience for me to eat meat. So I don't. I've been around people who do. I have no qualms. I do find it after 25 years of not eating meat. I do find it myself a bit grossed out when I see a big steak on the plate. Now, in terms of spiritual awakening and growth, there's no requirement for it whatsoever. People who eat meat get enlightened. People who don't eat meat get enlightened. It has nothing to do with that whatsoever. There are some sects that say it does. There are some Buddhist teachings that say it matters. Zen Buddhism, it does not, and many don't. And in fact, the early Buddhists actually did eat meat, not because they went out and got it, but they would just eat whatever was given to them. They would go out with their begging bowl. They got a bowl of rice, they ate a bowl of rice. They got a piece of chicken, they ate the chicken. That's just the way it is, the way it was. So they just accepted gratefully whatever it was that given to them. That was what was given to them for that day. So I would, and if somebody asks me, is it inherently spiritually beneficial to be a vegetarian? No. But when you really look at what the experience is, all of the implications of meat eating, you're going to kind of be convicted by your own conscience that to be true to yourself, to be true to your own wisdom, to be true to your own insight, does affect your, the path, the speed at which you approach awakening. So I would just have to leave it at that. Look for yourself. Do the exploration yourself, and you'll and then you will become convinced yourself as to whether or not this is really an appropriate behavior. If this behavior is really consistent with your sense of yourself, and does it feel good, right? And get enough information, and then see if you can actually do it. And my guess is you probably won't. That's what happened to me. And I grew up in the Midwest, where a meal wasn't a meal unless it had meat in it. And a salad was basically a chunk of iceberg lettuce drowned in either Thousand Island or French dressing or something. That was it, and a slice of tomato. That was vegetables. Um, so. I came from a background where it was meat. When I was in grade school, we had to do cow notebooks, right? I mean, because it was a kind of a rural area. So I'll leave it to you to just do the math. Thanks. Um, let's see. Um, Harun, Yurun. Damn it! I will get it. He's even spelled it for me phonetically to try to get me to get it. Damn, I'm sorry. GP, do you have any tips on quieting the mind to fall asleep? And it's Yarun. Did I say it right that time? Yarun? Yarun? You said it great last time. Great, thank you. I'll get it down. I will. This is funny because normally I get sounds really quick. Anyway, let's see. Oh, she added to that. Thanks, GP. The question was from the spiritual point of view that awakened people should not eat meat. For awakened people, there's no should. There's only an awareness of what the option is and which option is really the best for enhancing the possibility of other beings becoming awakened. Those are the decisions. There's no shoulds for the awakened being. There's nothing you're supposed to do. You are completely and totally free from all of that. So you are guided by wisdom, and as a result, you make appropriate choices, and even even things that would be your desire that you would like, if the effect of it, the consequences are too severe, you would just give it up. It's not worth it. Yeah. You're not the slave to any desire. Or any rules whatsoever, only the rules of love and wisdom. So, do you have any tips on quieting the mind to fall asleep faster? And it's, oh, right, Yarun. Well, the first thing always, and it may seem kind of contradictory, is kind of lose that sense that you need to fall asleep faster. What it really is usually is we live in a time where our minds are very, very active. They're engaged all the time. It's one of the problems with all the distractions. So I ask people at the beginning of satsang to turn all that stuff off so there is no distraction. So you can actually focus your attention for a minute. And actually just turning off the distractions and focusing your attention on one thing is a form of meditation. And in fact, it is you'll find things begin to slow down. You can do things like, have a hot tea or tea and lemon, take a warm bath or a shower, just kind of make sure it's really, really dark. There's all sorts of little things you can do to actually set the stage for it. And then if your mind is still being active, the key is to remove your attention from the mind, and especially remove your attention from the idea that somehow you've got to get your mind quiet, right, in order to sleep, because that's actually not it's not a true statement. The sleep is very natural and comes to the body, and it will come whether the mind is active or not. What you want to do is you want to get yourself in the place where you are free from the activity in the mind. So it doesn't matter to you whether the mind is chattering or not. And of course, the end result of that is the mind slows down and stops chattering because your attention to it, and especially your conflict with it, is what keeps it going. Because even the thought, I really need to quiet my mind in order to get to sleep, is the mind. Right? I mean, what else is thinking that? And so if you believe that, you've set up a condition. Now you've got to get your mind to be quiet, but of course it's the mind that set up the condition. It's the mind that's trying to get it to be quiet, which means it's not going to be quiet. It's simply not going to work. Become really good at simply withdrawing your attention from anything you don't want to focus on, including a belief about sleep. and then just let nature take its course. Right? You just completely let go of your need to control anything. Even let go of your need for sleep. Let all of it go and just be there. And you can even take it a step further and notice that there's this very quiet, very still awareness that's aware of the mind. It's aware of the conflict of the mind with the mind. It's aware of the need for sleep. It's aware of the body. It's aware of everything. And you'll notice that it is not the least bit disturbed by what it happens to be experiencing. And that's the ultimate place to get to. That's the ultimate awakened place to get to. So I hope that answers it for you, Yaroon. I keep having to refer back and look at it. Bill Craig, GP Cooking Channel. Yes, that's right. The vegan kitchen with GP Walsh. I do like food. What can I say? I just don't, but I can't cook. So, Sue from South Africa. Hi. Anne says, I find listening to your meditations helps me drop off. Ah, very, very good. Yeah, people listening to me talk off and go to sleep. No, I mean, I actually made a meditation for helping people to go to sleep, which is really just, bringing attention away from that and into some place. And that's really what, meditation, guided meditation does, is listening to someone doing a guided meditation, especially if it's got good music, it's well produced, and they got a nice sounding voice, and they're adept at doing guided meditations. They will gently guide your attention away from the focus of attention that's actually causing all of the activity in the mind, and you become quite calm and quite sleepy. I mean, I will put on things like that for myself sometimes at night, because I always like to make sure that I'm in the best state of mind when I go to bed. And I just really let go of everything of the day. I wipe the slate clean so that sleep is absolutely pure, content-free. Let the mind do whatever it needs to do. And in the morning, it's the same kind of a meditation. I wake up with the idea that this day has never happened before. It's not a continuation of yesterday. It is not just an extension of history, that it is fresh, it's a blank canvas, it's a new child, and it's got an entire future open to it. So, Richard, I've been listening to some of your work on desire. Most of mine these days, I'm about your age, oh my God, that old, don't seem to have a clear object. Would like your thoughts on engaging with them. Many thanks. Yeah, and I think that's, Richard, I think that's actually kind of true as we enter into elderhood. There's less and less of a focus on the objects of desire, and more really on legacy, the effect we have on others, the quality of things. So is there a sense of desire? Is there a sense of a desire for? And of course there is, because there's no life without desire. When desire is gone, life is gone. You're gone. You're somewhere else, right? We're back here just kind of cleaning up your remains and burying it or burning it, whatever your pleasure is. But you're not in it anymore. So there's always the nature of life is to evolve and grow. The nature of the self is to be absolutely still and changeless. It's weird, I know, because the self gives rise to life. But you could think of life as being the dynamic aspect of the self, because the self being infinite and inexhaustible and not static, right? It's not like the self is this thing that's never changing. It is changelessness. It is kind of like the essence of everything that makes everything possible. And so it is absolutely limitless and inexhaustible in the various kinds of forms that can be created that give it expression. Like, I mean, we'll never run out of ways of being loving and kind to each other, will we? We never will. There's just no end to it. There's just no end to the forms that love can take. But if you were to just try to define love without a form, you simply couldn't do it. You just, I mean, you get lost in the sauce. Like I use the example of trying to describe music without humming a tune. You can't do it. And yet both of them are the same. So the nature of the self, of the real you, is constantly manifesting in forms that are constantly evolving and growing and expanding, like the universe is. I mean, look at the history of humanity. It has been a constant expansion of consciousness, constant, and it's still going. It's never going to stop. It's just going to keep going and going and going. The energy of that expansion that is just bubbling right out of the true self, of God, if you will, is desire. We feel it as desire. We feel it as that impulse to move and to grow and to evolve. And it's not unnatural for us to get something, be satisfied with that, and then a new desire arises. If you see that simply as a personal possession and my desire, and the fulfillment of my desire is my lasting satisfaction, then you'll see that desire is a tar baby. Desire is the cause of suffering, because it's endless and you never actually get what you want. But if you see desire as actually simply life fulfilling itself, and that the satisfaction is in the self, and the expression of that satisfaction is in desire and fulfillment, this beautiful loop, at that point it's no longer the cause of suffering, it's the expression of being. So it's the same thing. When you see it as that, it's nirvana. When you see it as something I have to get in order to be fulfilled, you're in samsara or maya. So it's really how we see desire that matters. So just, your desires may not be distinct, but just sit with it. And start small. Start on little things. I mean, you get up in the morning, right? So obviously you want to get up. Maybe there's something that draws your attention. It can be small, you know. What am I going to have for breakfast? There's a desire. You become aware of how desire is in absolutely everything. And then just let it grow all the way up to your highest aspiration. What would you like your life to stand for? What would you like to be remembered for? Right? That's really powerful stuff. And that will invoke our highest and our deepest desires. Because our highest and our deepest desire is for the experience of immortality, the experience of constantness, for the experience of the all. Well, the ultimate fulfillment of all desire, I mean, the ultimate desire is the desire for all, to be all. Pretty big, and yet that's where it comes from. And every little desire is a fulfillment of that. So just give yourself some time to be with it, really honestly, too. I often find that when people start trying to dream again, there's so many thoughts they had about what's right and what's wrong, what's possible, what's realistic. Oh, I love that one. Somebody tells you, somebody doesn't want you to do something they don't want you to do. They tell you it's unrealistic. It's immoral, it's sinful, you shouldn't even have those kinds of thoughts. Just use it as a great opportunity to explore not only the energy of desire, but the habits and patterns of your own conditioning. And you'll just find out every desire is innocent, it's pure, it's infinite in its scope. It brings with it all the energy that it needs to end up fulfilling itself. The deeper the desire, the bigger the fulfillment, the bigger the payoff. We're not interested in immediately getting to the fulfillment. We like the foreplay. We want it to develop and grow and mature and finally be fulfilled in a great depth, that we can just settle into this wonderful satisfaction of pure being, and then watch how pure being does it again. Creates universe upon universe upon universe upon universe. And that pattern will continue and would operate completely without interference, like it does with children, unless it runs into our conditioned patterns. So even if you're feeling like, I don't know what my desire is, that's a conditioned pattern. Because have you ever met a kid that didn't know what he wanted? We're taught that. right? Children know what they want. They're unambiguous about it, and they reach for it, right? We're all that. We have been taught to slap our own hands. We've been taught to cut ourselves off. And it's time to stop doing that. Let's see. Vicky says, I find your open heart is the garden of manifestation. The wordless meditation music is so soothing. It always helps me to fall asleep. Oh, thank you. I'm glad. Thank you very much. Yeah. I still like to write music, although I haven't written much lately. SS, hi GP. The process of awakening seems difficult and causes some kind of isolation and depression as I feel like no one around me gets me anymore. Help! We'll make SS becomes SOS. Well, first off, it isn't inherently difficult. To know who you are is the easiest thing in the whole world. I mean, it's what you are after all. What's difficult is how deeply habituated we are into the conditioned patterns which we've mistaken for ourselves, how deeply ingrained in the nervous system the false sense of self is. Who you think you are is not who you really are. Now that seems obvious. You can have an image of yourself that's completely untrue. Everybody gets that. What we don't get is that this image that we hold of ourselves has embodied itself in our nervous system as thoughts, feelings, and sensations, impressions, impulses, beliefs, assumptions, so that we literally feel like this person we imagine ourselves to be, even though that person is completely made up by the mind. But the power of belief is so strong that it embodies itself literally in the body. And that's why it feels difficult. Every habit, and this is the most tenacious habit there is, every habit is difficult to crack. But it can be cracked. And a way to do it, a very simple way to do it, again, I'm going to be talking about this in the manifestation class, is to simply be constantly kind of upgrading the focus of your attention. So if it's feeling difficult, right, don't fight it. First, just kind of give up the fight. Stop. Even give up, I want to be enlightened, right? Just even put that out the door, right? Because all that means is I really want to be myself, and I want to know myself. That's what it is. You are yourself already, right? That's the first good news. The first good news is that no matter what you've believed yourself to be, what you actually are has never changed. That's still there. Your original innocence, purity, goodness, brilliance, creativity, genius, that's all still there, right? We just don't have access to it because we have been seduced by the devil or by Mara, depending on which tradition you are, to believe ourselves to be something else. We've eaten the forbidden fruit, the knowledge, the fruit of the knowledge of the tree, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the false view of ourselves. And it's so dominant. So, any thought you have, right, just notice how the thought makes you feel, a thought you have about yourself. Right? Notice how it makes you feel. And then just pick any thought that makes you feel better. Now, I always ask people, did that feel better? Yeah, it felt better. So why aren't we going towards the thoughts that feel better? You know, even if it's total self-deception, it's artificial, it's nonsense, it's self-hypnosis, even if it's total bullshit. So I'd rather feel better, right, than this crummy reality. But you have some authority to say, you know what, this focus I keep putting in this place because I feel bad is simply because I've been trained to do it. I'm basically like a dog. You know, somebody says speak and I speak, right? It's really that Pavlovian, right? We're just conditioned to think of ourselves in those terms. And I just invite you to start thinking of yourself in different terms. And just and be playful with it, because you can tell the better the thoughts you have about yourself, the lighter you feel. And you can just kind of just back off and smile and look at the entire thing, even though you can't really do anything about it first. Just allow the feelings to be there. If you just stop fighting with your feelings, stop fighting. Oh, I want to be different. I want to be enlightened. I want to change. If you even just stop that and notice that, yeah, there's this desire to be there, but right now I'm on vacation, you'll notice that feels better. Just allowing yourself to feel what you're feeling in the moment feels better. And the nervous system was designed to gravitate towards pleasure and away from pain. It will want to come back there, which is why awakening, you'll find, isn't actually hard. The only thing that's hard is breaking the habit of constantly being drawn back to the sense of ourselves, which just feels crummy. And just go, wait a minute, my attention is not where I really want it to be. This isn't who I am. And then just, I'm going to look over here now. Even if it's a bit of a struggle at first, even if it takes some discipline, and my attention keeps getting drawn back, eventually it'll get weaker and weaker until finally your attention is this way and you're walking in that direction. And then you won't say it's difficult anymore. You'll say it's the most natural and easy thing to do. It's like blinking or growing hair. It's who I am. What could be easier than being what you already are? I hope that helps you out there, SS. Mark C. Gee, can you comment on being on the receiving end of gaslighting? Wow. My response is to disengage when it's occurring, as there is no way to redirect it, and it just leaves me exhausted. Well, gaslighting is a technique that's used quite a bit in propaganda, and there's plenty of people who actually do it. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's kind of like, it comes from, well, I don't know if it originated with the movie Gaslight, or it was around before that. But it's basically things are gradually changing around you, and you get used to them. You might even think that there's something wrong with you, that you are becoming less and less efficient. In the movie, this guy was trying to convince his wife that she was going blind for some reason, and he just kept turning down the lights. And I don't know, it was a long, long time ago, and I don't remember how he managed to see, but it looked like he could see and she couldn't. And so he was, and I don't know how the whole setup, right, but this is Hollywood, right, so the story was plausible when you're watching it. But the whole idea is that he was trying to convince her that it was her when it was actually something else. So I don't know exactly, Mark, what experience you're having to disengage. You want to disengage when, well, the moment you know it's occurring, there's a saying, a strategy known is a strategy blown. The moment you know it's occurring, you're not in it anymore. You're out, right? And now you can take actions to just extricate yourself from the whole situation, or anybody who's trying to do that to you, and just take responsibility at that point to reclaim back your energy, because you're not going to get people to stop trying to take advantage of you, to try to get things from you, to try to do things to you, and then blame you for doing it. You're not going to, those people are out there, and way too many of them are in government. So did I get at the essence of what you were after there, Mark? If not, please let me know. Dagang, is cause and effect an illusion? If both are images in consciousness, why do we have to create certain conditions in order to get the result? E.g., starting a fire with a match. It is a great question, and I could take the next hour and talk about it. On a relative plane, on the realm of this earth, things are all cause and effect. If I drop the glass, it's going to fall. If it hits the ground, it's going to break. there's always a cascading chain of events. This is the nature of life. It is the nature of karma. It's unavoidable. So is there such thing as an escape from karma? Well, the deepest spiritual traditions tell us that there is. What could it be then? It is pretty remarkable to learn that the Buddha's enlightenment came when he saw the illusion of cause and effect, when he saw the illusion of the chain of causation. Now it's interesting because he taught the chain of causation to people. But eventually, to his closest followers and to those who are ready to hear it, he pierced that veil as well. There is no cause and effect to the self. Reality was not caused. Reality does not cause anything. It is everything. In order for there to be a creation that was caused by the self, it would have had to exist independently from the self. But what you're talking about is the self simply pondering its own nature. And pondering its own nature, the image it holds within itself is what we call creation. This is literally everything you see, feel, and experience is God thinking of herself, pondering herself. Now, that's not a cause in the sense that this caused that, because there's no this or that. There's only the self pondering the self. And the nature of the self being infinite in its scope, the pondering goes on forever and is inexhaustible in the various forms that it can assume. Within this understanding, you see that this isn't causing that. This is simply the infinite mind pondering itself, which is not really causing it, it is simply being it. So in that sense, there is no cause and effect. Now, on our relative plane, we deal in a world that thinks of things in terms of cause and effect. And so we have to do stuff, right? If I want to go somewhere, I get in the car. I get a plane ticket. I call Uber, right? Those all seem to be cause and effect. But when you start looking at them closely, you just really see the ongoing unfoldment of one experience after another. And even when you begin to take it into yourself, and the sense of yourself, gets closer and closer to identifying fully with the self, you'll see that your individual experience here really follows exactly the same pattern. That it is just a constant unfolding of ideas. So it's not like we're trying to really take control of cause and effect, which may seem to contradict what I say, the video I did about creating your own reality. But I'll explain that later if somebody really wants me to. So it really is how you see things. If I'm dealing in a world that I think are just all separate, independently functioning objects, then things are going to bump into each other, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and there's just cascading cause and effect. But if I see it instead as completely a subjective experience, then it's not really a cause and effect. It's just this constant unfoldment of life, purpose, and my own sense of self. It's kind of like, talking about cause and effect in a dream. Yeah, it appears to be one thing causing another, but none of it's being caused by what's in the dream. It's all being caused by you. So everything is actually being generated as an image. So there's not even anything there that's being caused or an effect of something. So it all just kind of disappears into the oneness, which is the purest way to view it. But that empowers you to really master the world that appears to be of objects and appears to be cause and effect. And all that is our sense of the unfoldment of reality over what appears to be time. Right? When in fact it is simply It is simply the ongoing development of God thinking of herself. That's the best way for me to put it. And I think when you see it in those terms, you see that it's not really cause and effect. Does that help, Dagon? It's beautiful. It's a beautiful question. And it's very, very potent. And as I mentioned, it's just one of the teachings of the Buddhas that's not very well known. People are very aware of his teaching on the 12 links in the chain of causation, but not how he eventually deconstructed his own teachings on that score. Anne says, I love at my age being satisfied and at peace and all the joy and freedom to sleep, relax, and enjoy life. I agree, Anne. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bill says, thanks, G. When lethargy, sluggishness, and procrastination show up in life, what is actually going on? It's the kind of thing I like to answer individually because it'd be different for every individual that's experiencing it. But what I would do is, rather than giving it as food for the mind to try to figure out what's going on, is I would just dive into the feeling. Because sluggishness, lethargy, procrastination are all feelings, right? Procrastination is a feeling, I should be doing something I'm not doing and I don't want to do it, right? Lethargy is just, God, I don't have any energy. Nothing has got my curiosity. I don't have any interest, right? Whereas curiosity is alive, it's vital, you're there, right? And lethargy and sluggishness. Really, if you take away the curiosity, you're going to get all three of those. So again, there's always something that is wanting something of real value, of power, of real significance that's waiting to engage you, the creative aspect of our being, right? The opposite of that isn't these. This is when our natural curiosity is being thwarted, and so it's not allowed to express itself. The real opposite, not the opposite, the essence of that is just stillness and peace. It's not procrastination, it's not sluggishness, it's just peace, just a desire. It's like samadhi. There's no energy for anything, but there's no aversion to anything. It's just pure stillness. So in every feeling that you have, so-called negative feelings like lethargy, sluggishness, or procrastination, they are all, there's another side to that coin, which means that they're a feeling that is kind of the suppositional or imaginary opposite of some feeling that is actually quite alive and dynamic and explosive, really. It's kind of like darkness and light. Darkness isn't a thing in and of itself. It's the absence. It's the absence of light. When you go into a room and you need to see things, you don't turn on the dark sucker, right? It sucks all the darkness out of the room and leaves you with light. You turn on a light. You flood the room with light. And these kind of feelings and emotions, they really are kind of the apparent absence of the actual quite vital energy of life. So I just got, first off, be with them. Get curious about them. Curious about procrastination. Curious about, I'm sluggish. I have no idea. It happens to me. I mean, it's not, I find myself going, God, I have no interest in anything at all. I have no desire to do anything. You get really curious about that. And you may end up finding yourself taking a walk, calling a friend. Or you may just actually become very fascinated with what's going on inside, with all of the components, all the things that make up that feeling. And little by little, it'll just kind of expose itself to you, and you'll find the very act of even looking at those will establish a sense of curiosity, which is the vitality of life. I mean, notice kids are constantly curious. They're constantly going. Everything is interesting to them. We only lose interest in life because we've listened to our minds so much that we think we're experiencing the same thing over and over again. The mind just kind of immediately sees something, categorizes it, and then doesn't see it anymore. Well, yeah, it's been there before. And you can walk by something 1,000 times and it will have changed and you don't even notice it because you're still looking at the same thing. It's kind of the way we develop the conditioned patterns. So I would say, first off, become really curious about that, and then just watch what happens. So there's nothing in specific going on, except that something really does want your attention. There's some kind of dynamic thing needed for you, and it could be something very small, but man, it could be something really big. I mean, it could be that your life it's time for your life to head in a completely different direction. Maybe even, do something deeply significant. So, and not that you haven't been, just that something new, right? Take a different turn. Mine's done that several times. Carla joining from Mexico. Hi, Carla. Helen, where are we? There we go. Regarding giving up habits, GP, I've bitten my nails all my life, 66 years, and spontaneously stopped a year ago. I'm hoping the same will happen with my smoking. Working on myself seems to shift habits. It does. All of our habits revolve around our perception of ourselves, the image that we have of ourselves. And finding out who you are, seeing through the perception that we have of ourselves, dismantling it, seeing that it's not true, and discovering who you are is the answer to all the habits. The healing of habits is a byproduct of that. It's not its focus. It's not therapeutic in nature. It's existential. So, it's there. This is the ultimate calling of life, to discover that. And you'll find that it doesn't matter whether you have a habit or not. The mind wants to turn the habit into something in you that needs to be fixed. Oh, and when you get this fixed and you get more perfect, well, then you'll be fit for, existential exploration and coming to enlightenment. And that's just a bold-faced lie. It's just not true. I mean, there's been in the history of enlightenment is rather odd, with some really strange characters. I mean, one guy was a murderer, an assassin who had the awakening. And I mean, he'd say, literally hundreds of people he had killed. It was just a cold-blooded murder, and he woke up. Now, he was not a murderer after he woke up. That all just disappeared, because he was not that anymore. That image, that character was gone. It vaporized. So will these habits. So will all these other things. Now, in the process of awakening, things will fall away. They did for me. I had a lot of really, really bad habits, just very destructive habits. And they do fall away as a better sense of yourself emerges. So that's simply the direction to go on. And I think you're really doing great. The same will happen. And you can actually focus on it happening. And the way to do it is to simply imagine that what it feels like to not smoke. Just imagine being free of that habit, and really try to get very visceral and real about it. Because the better you feel, the more the energy wants to gravitate towards that. And the more it wants to gravitate towards that, the energy that doesn't feel so good is going to become less and less tasteful. It's going to become less and less attractive. Right? So the more we feed how we want to feel, and we feed the feelings that are more in line with who you really are, the stronger they get. The more attention goes there, the more the energy is going to want to gravitate in that way, and the weaker the habit will become, until it just goes, this really isn't interesting anymore. And like biting your nails, it just falls away, because it just isn't really you. So, Mark says, yes, thank you. Good. Let's see. What's our time getting to be? Oh, just about on the Richard said, my daughter drug me to a kicking and screaming, no doubt, to a vegetarian lifestyle. I'm truly grateful now, as there were health benefits. Yeah, there are. But it also changed my relationship to animals and the environment in unexpected ways. Yeah, and thank you, Richard. That that is. Oh, is the volume low now? Somebody just commented on that. Do I need to push it up? I can. I have a little bit more room, but I sometimes find that it starts to clip, and I don't. Okay, I think that's a little bit better. When you see something as food, it's kind of hard to, you can't make friends with your dinner, right? And so we have to dehumanize, and that's what people do. I mean, we gasp at how these animals are treated in animal agriculture, and how can somebody do that? Well, they don't. They have the image they're holding. It's not a living being. They don't think it has feelings. They don't think it has relationships. They don't think it has concerns. They don't think it has sensitivity. They don't think it has intelligence. So they look at that image, and that's how they do it. Folks, we do the same thing to our enemies. We'll call them a terrorist and inhuman and subhuman, and then we have permission to kill them in the name of some god. War operates on that, right? Because if I see my quote-unquote enemy as human, I can't kill him. If I see him just like me, trying to provide for their family and protect what's theirs and protect their community, just like we are, I can't do it. I have to become indoctrinated, brainwashed to see them as less than me. And that's what bigotry does. That's what prejudice does. That's what racism does. That's what all of the propaganda and lies about terrorists and other religions and other cultures does. It's to dehumanize it to the point where it's okay. Somehow it's morally okay. We did the same thing. The Native Americans were savages, so we said it was okay. We could justify in our Christian religion that we could literally genocide them and then genocide their culture, put them in white people's schools and not even allow them to have their own culture. And it was all justified. They would quote scriptures while they were whipping the slaves. So this has just got to extend to the animals. They are living, feeling beings. They have the same feelings we do. They don't have our capacity to express it. They don't have words for it. They don't have language. Most of them don't have opposable thumbs so they can build stuff. But they feel the same thing we do. You get to that, and the idea of eating them becomes absolutely unthinkable. But you have to first humanize them, for lack of a better word. You have to give them characteristics that they actually do possess. So you're right. When there's health benefits, because a vegetarian diet is healthier, it's not unhealthy to eat meat, but most of the meat all of the meat, most of the meat, not all the meat, organic, GMO-free, free-range stuff is actually healthy to eat, and it's not unhealthy for us to eat it. The human body can handle it, but we don't need to anymore. And when you make that switch, you do find you suddenly become open to seeing critters and the whole world through different eyes. Suddenly this becomes a place that's just alive. I mean, it's alive. And the whole view begins to change. And once that happens, you may even become a bit of an evangelist about it. I am, if somebody will listen to it. I give very reasonable arguments, but I also, put you in the corner so that you really recognize that you can't in good conscience do it, right? Not if you really see it, right? And I just ask people to really look, really, really look, and then make up your own mind. So let's see. Helen says thank you. Degong says thank you. Is the sound is fine? Great, Ali. Thank you. Alan says, thank you. Judy, what is your take on why some energy workers, healers, teachers, etc., can clear energy for others but not themselves? I've seen that happen several times in life. Oh yeah, oh yeah. We're we're blind. We're blind to ourselves, right? Period. It's it's the it's only the fully awakened masters who are no longer blind to themselves, because there's little self left. Quite frankly, there's, as long as I believe myself to be a separate self, I will have blind spots, because there will be an I that is unaware that it's not what it thinks it is. And so, yeah, it could be enormously powerful, have enormous influence on others, and still just have the most god awful habits and stuff going on. Look, I, I, I know a lot of people in personal development and in spirituality, and doing business in that world and having partnerships and affiliate relationships and that sort of thing. I'm just absolutely stunned, floored some of the time at how unspiritual and how materialistic a part of them can be, and they're not even aware of it. It goes completely unseen. You're just kind of so absorbed in the good that they're doing that they kind of become blind to their own weaknesses. And this is really important. This is why the Sangha, a community, a church, an organization, is so important, of peers, of people that you trust, people that you can confide in. This is why relationships, even a romantic relationship between two peers, is so very powerful. Somebody just tell you you're full of shit, and you'll believe them. Because a spiritual teacher, it get a little bit more well-known and more busy, gets very isolated. And you can get lost in your own thoughts, and that's how cults start. You get lost in your own thoughts, you start believing your own press, and there's nothing to remind you that you're a bozo on this bus as well. And before you know it, you now want to isolate yourself. And that's actually a species of madness. I noticed that in my mother, who was crazy, and that in other members of my family who are crazy, and some that I've worked with over the years. There's this sense of isolation that just does not allow for the assumptions to be challenged anymore. And at that point, you're lost. I mean, life's going to take care of you. Life's going to throw the big block of wood, the big brick at your head. It's going to happen, right? Because life has quite a sense of humor and doesn't let that stuff go on too long. And the more sincere one is, the more quick they'll recover from it. But some don't. Some don't. Some just crash. I mean, the story of the fundamentalist Christian preachers who end up, with pictures of them with with homosexual boys and prostitutes, and it's just like, I mean, can't you see it? I mean, so anyway, there's always a need to have some kind of touchstone, some kind of significant relationship or relationships in your life. This is the value of relationships. This is why I do not preach celibacy or don't get married or any of that sort of stuff, because these kind of relationships are absolutely essential for just keeping yourself sane. Just recognizing your human needs, your human foibles, your human vulnerabilities, your human weaknesses. The more you're with them, the stronger you get. The real strength comes, the real power comes from total acceptance of your vulnerability and buffoonery. Because when it's there and it's apparent, it's right in front of you, you are no longer fooled. You really are free of it, even though it's still there. So, thank you, Judy. That's a great question. Another question. When people cross over and we miss them, what is it that we are missing, since we are one and the same? Is it the image or personality, the role in our life? Thanks in advance. It's all of the above, actually. it's a very interesting thing. Somebody dying, and I like to use the word die, kick the bucket. I don't use the, you know, it's kind of a euphemistic thing. They passed over. I mean, we kind of want to, the body's dead. You know, we have no more sensory interaction with them, but that doesn't mean they're gone, right? The fact of the the fact of the matter is, our experience of everyone is energetic. We think it's physical. It's not. It's energetic. And when this body goes, you have as much access to that energy then as you do now, but you don't believe it. That is the illusion of death. Death is nothing at all. And the closer you get to seeing yourself as the self, you see everybody in the self, and then you see nothing is ever lost. No one's ever gone because the self is appearing. Those qualities that we identified as a specific person in a specific time in a specific place, you see, are are still very active. But they're not. But you begin to lose the sense of them being a separate person. You just see them. Oh, this is the whole. This is one instance of the whole. I like to use the example of think of you're surrounded by this white cloud. Everywhere you see is white. There are no objects. There's no form. There's nothing. It's just white. And in fact, you don't even know it's white because there's nothing else other than the white. But then in this white cloud, this whiteness itself, shades begin to emerge. Shading emerges, and all of a sudden there's color, right? There's dark, there's light, there's hues. And it becomes more and more defined until there's an outline, and then there's stuff in the outline. And now it's all the cloud that you're looking at. That's all you're looking at. It hasn't changed, it hasn't become. But the cloud itself is kind of morphing into this other thing temporarily. And it's holding that pattern temporarily. And not only this thing, but the whole background of the thing, the cloud disappears, and now there's a field and a universe and all of these things, and it's all the cloud. And now this form just could vanish back into the cloud. Is it gone? No. It's just not in form, right? The potential, the reality of it is still there because all you've ever been looking at is the cloud. I mean, same as the screen you're looking at me right now. You're looking at the picture, you're hearing my voice, you're watching me gesture, doing all these things, all this stuff, and you're not noticing that you're looking at the screen. Everything you're seeing is being produced by the screen. Everything you're seeing is the screen. What is the screen? It is the capacity to create all forms, right? So at the same time you're seeing me doing my thing, you are seeing the screen doing my thing, right? So you just forget that you're looking at the screen and you think there's just this thing, right? And so you watch a movie about somebody going all over the earth trying to seek enlightenment. I mean, the character in the movie is searching all over the earth to try to find the screen, right? You are the screen. You are that white cloud. Yeah. It's what you are. And when somebody dies, they haven't died. They've simply gone off stage. They've gone off screen. The form isn't there anymore. It's not like there's a person now and they're in a transparent form and you can't see them. That form is gone, but the essence, the character, the quality of that person is still very much there, and you find that they're in you and you're in them, and the boundaries between them and you just disappear, and the illusion of death is gone forever. You'll know that the illusion of death is not going to be real the moment you die. If it is, I mean, that really is the end. We won't know because you'll just be gone. But if you're there and wait, oh, I'm dead. Oh, there is no death. It's just an experience. It's just the experience of the form, just dissolving back into the cloud. It's the wave just falling back into the ocean. It's always been the ocean. How did that do? How did it do, Judy? Did I get it? You sound fine. Thank you, Ali. Richard, yep, that's exactly right. We lose a fundamental empathy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes. And and folks, if we can gain back that empathy, war will stop. All of the propaganda is trying to teach us to hate. And and what baffles me beyond belief is this kind of stuff being taught by Christians whose own Savior said, love your enemies. Love them. Love like you'd love your neighbor. Because if you do that, of course, you find you don't have any. They only exist in your mind. We have no enemies, except our own beliefs about people. And then love, really, heaven comes down to earth, and love does rule the world. Lawiswis Kawayan. Oh my, I love these names. Forgive me for butchering it if I did. It's hi GP. I have an issue about the term creator being applied to me or other person. As a Christian, I find it blasphemous. Please explain why this is okay to believe. Hello from Manila. Hi, from Manila. Well, I use the term because it's popular. Because in actual fact, you're not, right? You're more of a facilitator. You're more of the vehicle through which it comes. And I'll do this in the class when I talk about the nature of desire. But take any one of the desires. Look, everything gets created out of desire, right? I mean, if God wants us to do something, He doesn't have to force us into do it. All He has to do is give us a desire to do it, and we'll do it, right? So desire is the natural way in which we reach out and do stuff. Everything that's ever happened on the earth, everything we're experiencing right now, has been a result of somebody desiring to do it. Right? So desire is the creative power. It's the creative force. It's the creative impetus. It collects a lot of stuff has to collect around it in order for that to happen. But if we really look closely, take any desire you have, trace it back to the origin of when you first felt it, and see if you can actually find yourself there creating it. You'll find it just spontaneously appeared. Where from? It came from the source of everything. For you as a Christian, that source is God or Christ. And I would encourage you to see it like every desire arises from God. So every desire in its nature is pure. Now, a desire arises, it can get grabbed by our ego, turned to different purposes, and be made impure. And by impure, I don't mean it doesn't fit with certain moral codes, because oftentimes the moral codes are forcing it into a form that isn't natural to it. What I mean is it's not purely itself anymore, right? But the desire itself is still pure. Our use of it, our perception of it, our way of trying to act it out isn't pure, but it is. So if you keep going back to the origin of it and realize that it originated with God, then you see that God is the creator. You know, however you conceive God to be, the self or Buddha nature or Jehovah or Christ or the Trinity. It doesn't matter how you perceive it. That's between you and God. But to recognize that God is the creator of everything, then you can recognize that you are simply bearing witness to the creation, and you're doing your job to be the purest, most hospitable garden in which that desire can grow. You want to be the good soil into which the seed has been sown, so that seed can grow. You didn't plant the seed. You can't determine what the seed's going to grow into. All you can do is tend the garden, right? And then you can feel that. So when I use the word creator, I'm really talking about that process of creation. For most people, they see themselves as the creator. And little by little, I can ease everybody into the point where they see that it's always the creative power of life itself, the creative power of divine love, of divine truth, or if you like, God. So I hope that answers your question. Lawiswis. I hope that answers your question, and please forgive me about your name. Here's Julia. GP, is the real self this presence that has never said anything and never had itself a thought? Is that what is only perceiving, but it does itself nothing? Yes and no. Sorry, the typical spiritual paradox here, right? It has never. I mean, Buddha gave multiple sutras a day, every day for 50 years. I mean, there's like 45,000 of them that have been recorded. And, some of them 300,000 lines. I mean, these, tomes, right? And yet he said, I have never said a thing. If we think of the self like a person who's thinking and deciding things and choosing, which is a lot of how way people view God, a very magnified and powerful person, then it would seem very strange to say the self has never said anything, never done anything. But if we see that both creation and the creator are a unified whole, that the self isn't separate from that which gives it expression, we see that it's not really saying something, but by its own nature, it is simply exuding existence, exuding the form that gives rise to words. So am I saying something now? Personally, no. There's a flow of thoughts that are coming to me, and they're coming to me because a question was posed. The energy of the question literally beckoned forth from the universe an answer. And that answer is coming and is taken over my mouth, and no, I'm not channeling, right? I'm not going to start speaking in an English accent in first person plural. We are very happy to see you today. But that's really how it works. And so there is this spontaneous creation that you can't really see it as being an act of will or volition that would be doing or saying something. So yeah, things are being done and said, but it's not this. It's not our personal sense of the doing and the saying. It's just this spontaneous arising. It's because the question is arising from the same place, and it's simply the self wanting to know itself. The question in you is coming from the same place as the answer in me, and that's the mystery of it, the sheer wonder of it. It's constantly the true self or God pondering her own nature. Can't really use gender, but you can't say it either. So we don't have a pronoun for the ultimate being, for the absolute. We don't have a pronoun for it. So I have to leave all that aside. So it is a beautiful paradox, and of course the mind is going to try to turn it into doing or not doing, and it's neither of those. It is obviously happening. You cannot deny that questions are being asked and answers are coming. You can't deny that things are being done, things are being spoken. The question is so the real thing is how do we perceive the nature of the doer? And is it really a doing, or is it a spontaneous happening arising out of this infinite capacity that is beyond our minds to fathom? And yet we experience it constantly as universe upon universe, an endless cascade of insight and thought and feeling and wonder and love. It's just endless, right? It just keeps flowing. And is somebody doing it? Not in the sense that we normally think of it. Is it being done? It's self-evident. So, does that help, Julia? Yeah, it's a beautiful question, and it's a beautiful thing to ponder. And take that question right into the heart of all questions. And you'll hear the same voice speaking in you that's speaking in me. As a matter of fact, that's what you're hearing right now. Brian, That was so beautifully put. Thank you. I'm not sure which thing you're referring to, Brian, because I'm kind of scrolling through here. Judy says, yes, GP, good to know I'm not going insane. Well, I'm not going to go that far, Judy, because I can still hear I can still hear who I am missing. Love the cloud analogy. Yeah, yeah, very, very, very good. Yeah, you still can hear, and you're not insane, and it's just a very different view of the world. The beauty of it is that when you see this incredibly crazy wisdom, this perception, this perspective of the universe that is so big, and that perception of being that is so big, it's so very easy to understand other people's points of view and not be the least bit reactive to them, and even speak to them when you get the opportunity to teach, as you very well might. And I hope you do. Let's see. Pam says, I find it awful what you were saying about death. The happiest days of my life were when my parents died. Make it sound like I'm still not free from them. Oh, of course you're free from them. You were free from them when you were alive. If you think their physical presence or absence is what keeps you in bondage, it's a big mistake. It's only your thought about them that keeps you in place. And your image of the parents is gone. That form is gone. Form does dissolve. But the essence, which is the essence of everyone, is the true self, right? The parents that you want to be free from, believe me, being free from my parents was a huge deal. But I couldn't. But it wasn't the physical deaths that made that happen. My father died when I was still, well, not really young, 24. I mean, young-ish. But if I had to wait until then for me to be free, oh my God, because my mother lived for another 30 years, right? Yeah, no, not 30, but another 25 years. And of course, she was the crazy one. She was the most difficult of the two. So, but my freedom came through reconciling with my own thoughts about them and freeing myself from the thoughts that I had, which freed me from their energy. Right, and then I just let them go on their merry way, and that energy would go and do whatever it needed to do. So don't don't panic that I say that they're still around. They're not still around in a form. They're not like you're going to get somewhere and they're going to be sitting there waiting for you. A lot of people have that idea. Oh my God, I hope they're not there. And others say, I just can't wait to see Mom when I die. And you're not going to. You're not going to see them in either way. That veil of death is much thinner than we think it is, and so don't worry about it. Just reconcile within your own heart. Your freedom is dependent on nothing but you, not on them at all. And so then you can really let them go, really completely let them go, and be free of them right here and right now, and not even have to worry about whether you're going to run into them later in some other life. It becomes irrelevant. Does that help, Pam? Does that help assuage that? Edita, what is a soul in your understanding? What is your take? Oops. Presence does nothing. What is your take on reincarnation? I don't see something that there is a soul. There's one soul. The soul is the self, God, the essence of everything. It is the one soul. We get in trouble when we divide the soul into souls, or being into beings, right? It's that sense of a separate self, that I'm one thing and you're another. And then I just kind of make it a little more ephemeral, so that when this body dies, then there's this still separate being that exists, this person. Not a form dissolving into the whole, and I'm the whole, again, the way I started, and have always been, even when I'm having this experience. But I'm still this being. Now, that's just a projection of our imagination that we are a separate entity. You're not a separate entity. You are the self. And so that soul is simply a thought in the mind. It's imaginary. Now, because we do know ourselves, we feel our sense of our own immortality. That sense, the self goes on. We then imagine that self going from body to body to body to body. And so the soul is kind of a ephemeralized version of the separate sense of self, something that exists independently of the one self. And that's the mistake. There is no soul. That is, there is no personal soul. There's no person. There's only the one being. And that being is the consciousness that you are. That one being is the consciousness that's hearing my words right now. The experience, that which is the one who is having this experience. We believe that one to be separate, but that one is having an experience right now that you call you is the one. The only one there's ever been. Does that answer it for you, Aditya? Lawi Swiss, thank you for your explanation. Yes, you said my name correctly. It means swaying bamboo. Oh my God. Lawi Swiss. Oh, that is so beautiful. Swaying bamboo. I love the sound of bamboo forests. If somebody knows where I can get a recording of a really nice high quality recording of bamboo forest in the wind, it's the most gorgeous sound, and I wanted to use it for creating some meditation stuff, but I've never been able to find a good recording of it. I tried in my own in some places when I was living in Florida, but I just couldn't get a good one. Julia said, thank you. Brian says, all of it, actually. Oh, great. Thanks, Brian. And the other son says, hey, GP, it's obvious that our space contains our bodies, but why is it not obvious to us that our bodies contain space as well? Well, because, in everyday life, you couldn't walk around functioning like, oh, my body is 99.99999% empty space, You can't do that when you're grocery shopping, right? All you're doing is responding to these feeds. I need this food, and this looks good, and that sort of stuff. You're simply responding to the kind of energy that's happening in the moment. So the conventional way in what we look at ourselves is not a problem. It's not a problem unless it creates suffering, and it doesn't create suffering. What creates suffering is when we believe our bodies to be ourselves. And so when we actually start looking at it and we start realizing that the body is predominantly empty space, we can begin to wonder, who am I then? Is that all I am? Is this collection of mostly space that happens to be a form temporarily? I don't know if you've ever seen the films, videos of starlings when they call it murmuring. We see them, they're a bunch of them flying, and almost as one, they're moving and forming these incredibly hypnotic and beautiful forms in the sky. I remember when I lived in San Francisco, there was a park in the East Bay, Ohlone Park, I think is what it was called, and it was in the wetlands right in the southern part of San Francisco Bay. And I would go out there, it was this rolling hills, and they would be there doing their this dance, and I would watch for hours. You're just mesmerized by it. Now, the interesting thing about it is that there's no obvious center to it. There's nobody controlling. They don't have little headsets on, and there's no guy that's, okay, everybody turn left, flank to the right, flank to the right. There's no there's no center place of organization to it. Biologists have begun to call that a self-organizing system. But it's, when you look at it, if you didn't know what they were, it would look like some kind of a being. Same thing, have you seen fish do the same thing, where you see them, this spinning ball, right, to help avoid predators. And they're all doing it, and they're all moving kind of in unison, right? But nobody's controlling it. And there's no center to it. You probably didn't realize it, most people don't, that we have this sense of being this center point in the brain, right? Well, there is no center point in the brain. The various decisions and actions and reactions happen in different parts of the brain. There's no central processing area that all the information goes to. A decision is made, and then the information goes out. Decision made over here, over here, over here, over here. So the sense of there being a center belongs to consciousness, not to the brain. The brain is a collection of functions that are functioning together, but not but not organized by a central processing unit the way a computer would be. Now, this is really amazing. What is holding all of this together? What keeps this form together? I mean, it's what scientists want to know, and their answer is always some kind of physiological or physics, a physic or atomic, some kind of answer to why it holds together that way. But for me, the thing that holds it together is not in it at all. The thing that holds together it is the space in which it is actually happening, which is consciousness. It's all happening within the consciousness. And you find that everything is kind of coordinated from within and from without at the same time. So the body isn't in space, the body is space. The space isn't in the body space is the body. You can't separate the two, right? It is like the analogy I was using of the cloud and the form. They are the same. But the space isn't the empty space we think it is. The space is self-awareness. It is consciousness. We see it as space when we're seeing it as objects. We see it as time if we see the things as events. But we're actually, the place at which both time and space is being perceived is beyond both. And this is simply the dance of consciousness, the dance of space, the dance of emptiness, if you will. I know, the mind can't grasp it. Right? The mind will always be looking for some thing that is coordinating the effort. It believes in it, but the neurology is very clear. There's no center to the brain. There's nothing holding this body together. Nothing. Nothing we know of. Nothing you can point at and say, oh, there it is. There's the linchpin. There's no linchpin. It is dancing together. You might even say it's dancing together because it wants to, by choice. It's just the desire of life. It is an utter mystery, folks. And I invite you to just dive into the mystery. There's no answer to this. Even when I give the answer of consciousness, it's not the full answer. Because it's a total mystery. Is consciousness dancing with itself? Consciousness as emptiness and formless? Consciousness as form? Same thing? Yeah, same thing. Let yourself, like a little kid, just be entranced by the mystery of it. And that mystery will unfold into a wisdom that never loses its sense of mysteriousness. So, I think we can call it for today. The questions have slowed down a little bit. I've slowed down a little bit. Feels like a good place to kind of bring it to a head, an end. To let this moment dissolve back into the cloud from which it came, and remember that every experience you have, every event of your life is spontaneously arising directly from this self, or if you prefer, directly from God. It is a spontaneous creation in the moment. Creation is not something that happened back then and is kind of going on its own through a pattern, right? God started this thing in motion here, started it all up, and now it's kind of bumping into each other and making things happen and operating on its own. Creation is the spontaneous self-awareness of the divine in this moment. What you are experiencing is quite literally God pondering her own infinite nature. We experience this as life, as being, as each other, as relationship, as love. So, thank you all for being here. Again, the gpwalsh.com/deep dive if you want to join the class, which is coming up on Wednesday. And also something coming up, I'm going to put it, whoops, what happened? Oop, oh, sorry, clicked on the wrong button. Also coming up, I wanted to tell people about, is you all say thank you and goodbye and all that, is that I'm going to be doing a live retreat. It's coming up at the end of July, so there's plenty of time for those of you who might get there. I just put a link in the chat. I was invited by the Krishnamurti Educational Center of Canada to do a 3-day retreat in Victoria, British Columbia. It's a non-profit, so it's very reasonable. The price ranges from 140 for the entire retreat, up to 340, depending. 140 means you're just getting your own accommodations and no meals. Then you can get other accommodations and have the meals. You can have a private room, or you can have a shared room. 340 is for a private room, but that includes all the meals. $340 for the retreat, and 3 meals, and board, and a place to sleep. So it's a nonprofit. I make just enough. They're just basically covering my expenses, so I'm basically donating the time to it. The name of the retreat is going to be From Delusion to Awakening, and I'm going to go through the entire process and exercises, all sorts of stuff to assist you in your awakening, and then how to embody that awakening in your daily life. So I'm very excited about it. As I said, the link is there for you to sign up. I wanted to give it's like 3.5 months from now, so if somebody wants to travel to get there and be there, it'd be great. It's very inexpensive if you want to stay there afterwards. It's like $40 a night. It's a very reasonable price if you want to stay there and just explore the area. Bouchard Gardens. There's a bunch of beautiful places around there that you can explore. I'm going to stay a little longer and go down and visit my son in Seattle and my sister. So I wanted to tell everybody about that. This is I've not done one like this before. I'm extremely honored to be invited to Krishnamurti Center. I mean, one of the biggest spiritual figures of the 20th century, and so it's really quite an honor to be doing it. It's going to be small. It only holds about 40 people, so it's going to be a nice, intimate setting for everyone. So those of you who are interested in being in Victoria in the summer for a deeply spiritual retreat, I'll be there leading it. So I hope you guys will check it out. So let's see. Thank you for Barbara, from Edita, from Vicky. Thank you. Great wisdom, peace, and love, everyone. GP, we love you. Thank you, Sarah. Vicky, thanks everyone for the contribution. Yes, thank you all. And don't forget Patreon. It helps me. My next goal for Patreon is to get a space, a regular space that I can rent every week, to do this live so people can come live, and we can kind of grow the satsang that way. So Bill says, blessings, everyone. Have a wonderful, spontaneous trip. Thanks again. Thank you. Okay, everybody. Thank you all. Love you all. Namaste.